you've made the call to the listing agent. They have multiple offers, competitive situation. What do you do to sweeten the deal to get them to look at your offer?
Man, I feel like that's every house in this market. Like, even if it's just a dump. But what I do when I first call the agent is, before even calling the agent, I'll actually start a group chat with the lender and the agent, just saying, hey, this is my lender's information. You guys can coordinate a time for you to kind of talk and see how the financials are for my buyer. And then as soon as I send that, I actually give a call to the agent and then just, prefaces, hey, I just sent you a message with my lender. He's a little harder to get hold of if you don't have an appointment, so I just wanted to make that easy on your end. And then when I first get them on the line, I just kind of try to get as much information out of them as far as what the other offers are looking at. I feel like some agents are open books, and those are my favorite ones, but they'll tell you everything about the offers and saying, hey, if you come in at this, you'll have a better shot, and just kind of give you the information that will butter up the offer on your end. Because usually when you get on the line with these other agents, the multiple offer situations, they'll send out that best, highest, and best, so you'll have another shot at, getting your best offer in. So I think just sweetening the pie and, being a little brown noser and getting as much information out of them is usually the move. And then you can kind of go back to your buyer and, make your offer as strong as possible.
Tell us again really quick about that group chat with the lender and the listing agent. You said you tried to set them up for coffee, or what did you say?
Oh, I just set them up with a group chat. I also put my lender's assistant on there. So it's my lender, the assistant, the listing agent, and myself. And I'll just put them in there, introduce them, and just say, hey, can you guys give this listing agent a call? He wants to see how the finances are for this and this buyer. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Is that through your email, Mason, like a group chat?
No,
on your phone?
Yeah, I keep it all through group chat. I feel like everyone is cool with texting. So my texts usually get a quicker answer or reply than an email would. So
you mean group text?
Yep, group text.
Okay.
A little chat. And then you can name the chat. Like, I sometimes mess around and name the chat like, we're going to win this offer, and just get in their head. You know what I mean? So some agents are cool with this, some are, cranky. So is what it is.
All right, should we move on to the next question?
Well, let's have a couple other things. Does Michael or Linda want to put in anything on that?
Yeah, I'll go real quick. So I think for me, what's most important, it's a relationship business. So I think the worst thing you can do is say, hey, I'm sending in a strong offer, and just be like super pushy about it from a perspective of, hey, like you have to understand that you're not one bit in control. You're just a party of 10. And so I think for me, it's all about becoming friends with the other side. And I think the main objective is, and you can really tell, like if I'm working with an agent who I've never done a deal with, I'm looking, is that Sotheby's office? Is it Plum office? Is it Keller's office? Like, who do I know that I've done a super pleasant deal with that can reach out to them and vote on my behalf? So I think it's relationship connections, connect the dots on who you know. And I think that is, the amount of offers I've won just because they simply like how we communicate versus price, I think that weighs the world.
Yeah, I totally agree with that too. And I know Linda can speak to that. There's a big thing about the longer you're in the business and the more relationships you have, you get a good reputation. One of the other things I would add to it is I try to figure out their personality type. If I have the luxury of looking at their past listings, so I can figure out, okay, are they a D personality where the descriptions are this long, or are they an I personality, then I'm gonna go in and turn that on when I first call them. Sometimes I don't get that luxury, so I'm just gonna ask them a couple of quick questions out of the gate to figure out what kind of personality type I'm working with, so I can prove to them that we'll work well together.
And I would also add to that, I want to know, aside from price, and I specifically ask, aside from price, what is your seller's motivation and what does their perfect offer look like? There have been lots of times where my clients have won in multiple offer situations, not being the highest priced offer. And it's simply because we paid attention to other things that they were looking for, like leasebacks or hard earnest money, or, you know, specific dates on timeline, those kinds of things. Those things are, I think, often overlooked. And the fact that you call and specifically ask those questions gets noticed.
Perfect segue, Linda. What specifically do you ask those agents?
Yeah, so I'm going to pull a page out of Lee Stern's book here, and I go through the contract paragraph by paragraph, and I make sure that I'm addressing everything I possibly can in the offer that the seller is wanting to look at. So I'm going to start with earnest money. Is it important to the seller that they have a certain amount of earnest money, or what does that look like? Then I'm going to go through inclusions and exclusions. Is there anything outside of the listing, or is it just in the listing what they're taking and what they're leaving? And then I'm going to go to pricing. I'm going to ask specifically if they have cash offers that we're competing against, or if the listing agent is representing any of the buyer offers on the property. I'm then going to go through the due diligence items, additional money left after the inspection, additional earnest money period, and then what specific dates do they need. I want to go through the contract as fine-tooth comb as possible, so that we're sending over an offer that they're like, we don't even need to counter this. It's already written exactly how we need it.
What do you say when they say that they are representing a buyer on the property?
I'm double checking the listing to make sure that they don't have dual agency in there. So when you list a home, you can actually look at the listing and tell whether or not the listing agent has the ability to discount their own commission if they're working with the buyer and the seller. I'm going to look at that information on the MLS. If they tell me that they're representing a buyer, I'm going to ask them what kind of discount, what kind of incentive they're giving their seller to represent both sides, so that I can talk to my clients and look at matching that.
Smart.
Love it.
You genius. I'll kind of piggyback off Linda. I think everything she said is exactly what you should be doing. I think just finding the motivation to sell on the seller's behalf is a huge deal. I mean, for an example, I got one under contract who the seller was in a tough situation because they had to vacate the property because their family members were living in it and they were just trashing the property. So her motivation to sell was much higher than, you know, someone who still hasn't found a property that they want to move into. So I think finding that can really outweigh, you know, a quicker close. Is that beneficial? Or a free lease back, is that beneficial? Or something of that sort.
Yeah, I just won one with the free lease back too. And with Liz's help, we did, she tipped me off in team meetings. So I called her to see how she does it. And I just basically said, well, we're happy to give you a 30-day lease back upon acceptance. So if you want it, go ahead and accept our offer. It kind of worked. It kind of backfired. The seller actually got nervous that we wouldn't sign a 30-day lease back once she signed our offer. So she was questioning how she could trust us. And in the end, I said, you know, we just wanted to get this deal worked out as soon as possible. So, you know, if you'd rather do a 30-day post-possession, why don't you just counter me with that and we'll accept it. And we did.
So yeah, I guess finding motivation. Mike, what do you think?
I think another thing that's huge, I think it's more about the communication of, so my goal and objective, if it goes on the market that day, I'm trying to get it under contract immediately. And so the phone call is, hey, what will it take to get it under contract now? And then, but you also have to realize, don't make the call and then go dark for a few days. So if it's a traditional agent who's going to hold out until Monday, I'm calling them Friday. Hey, what's changed? What do we need to do? Saturday. Hey, I know I'm annoying. What's changed? What do we need to do? And I think it's never, oh my goodness, are you going to really drag me out until Monday? Because the moment you start giving signs of, hey, you're frustrated, like you don't have control, you don't have a contract. So it's almost like, don't pull a bait and switch, but give the seller what they want until you get that contract. And then you can start going after them in different ways. But I think it's really about, hey, communicating, my buyer's here to perform no matter what. Give me the price that we have to get to, give me the terms, and we'll make it happen.
100%. And I've actually taken a couple of buyers in contract from calling the listing agent and saying, you know, hey, do you have multiple offers? And they're like, no, but we have like 50 showings. We're probably going to do highest and best. And just asking, what do we have to do to submit an offer right now that your seller won't be able to refuse? And just avoiding the whole multiple offer situation right up front.
Because you got to look at it as an agent. Yeah, they're best representing their client, but they also just want to get the deal done and get their client out of the place or moved on. So if you go in there and say, hey, we can bring you an aggressive offer, something to make all parties happy, will you work with us and try to figure something out? Because I feel like a lot of agents aren't even calling the listing agents. Like they'll shoot a text message, or like some will just send an offer in and I'll be like, wait, I don't even know who you are.
On the properties where I've had, you know, 10 plus offers in the last couple of months, literally only 2, maybe 3 agents are even bothering to call me at all. The other thing is, fill in your contracts completely. Like even if you have to put an NA in there, like fill it in all the way, because listing agents, especially when we're going through and looking at, you know, 10, 12 offers, the first time I come across an offer that's not completely filled out, I'm like, I don't want to work with this agent. Like they can't even bother to send over complete paperwork.
Yep. Yeah. And just being very alert on top of it. When the agent calls you, you answer. When they need something from you, get it to them as soon as possible. Like it's a listing agent and buyer's agent. We're a team, and everyone looks at it. A lot of people look at it as like an enemy. No, like we should work together, and that's going to make the process smoother for everyone. So.
Yep,
Awesome.
I agree with all that stuff. And I like Michael was saying, it's all about being pleasantly persistent. I'm going to get an offer accepted this afternoon, just literally because I've called and texted the guy every single day.
Yeah, it just kind of demonstrates, sets you up for what the transaction is going to look like. If you're the guy who's overly communicative from the start, they just say, yeah, I want to work with you, Liz, thanks.
And one other question that I didn't hear anybody else say that I always ask is how they know the sellers, how they came across this deal. Because if it's a personal relationship, you want to be really delicate, and sometimes it's a little different, and you can use that to your advantage too.
Okay, so those are some great competitive edges and questions we can bring to the other side, but let's go back to the buyer that we're representing, and how do we prepare them for this aggressive market?
I'll lead with that. So the buyer consultation is really the most important thing that you can do for your clients. And this is not just people that you're just meeting, but especially people that you already have an existing relationship with. It's really important to take every buyer through the same process and really educate them on what the market is doing and what their options are to strengthen their offer when they find a home that they love. So I have a list of things that I go through with each client on how specifically they can strengthen their offer. And I know Paul does this because I got this from Paul, gosh, it had to have been like 2 years ago, but it was like, here are the things that we can do. What is your comfort level and what is your risk tolerance in doing these things? So that way I know when we find a property that you love, we can push this far, your ability to perform goes this far, and then after that, it's not worth it. So examples being hard earnest money, appraisal waivers, additional earnest money, going without an inspection in some cases. I mean, these are all things that you can talk to your clients about. Here's what we are seeing in multiple offer situations. Tell me what your risk tolerance and your comfort level is in going through each one of these.
Yeah. I would add to that too. I recently scared a buyer. I prepared them too much for this market, and they were like, holy cow, I've got to pay over list price for any property. And it made it sound super scary that I almost lost him. It took a couple weeks to recover. So I guess with a grain of salt, that's kind of how you address that, Linda, is what is your tolerance level, your risk level? These are all things that have been working for me and my previous buyers. But if you're not capable of doing all of them, we just need to figure out what combination works best for you.
As soon as you have your buyer on the same page as aggressiveness level, then it's a done deal usually.
Yeah,
and be patient with them.
Yeah, and I find I take their situation, kind of assess what their tolerance and their risk and their money that they're willing to gamble. And then I always have a personal story of, okay, here's somebody who's just like you. Here's their experience. And I take them through, you know, maybe sometimes them losing a couple offers, or sometimes they get it accepted right out of the gate. So that then they know it's that whole Phil felt found thing, right? Where they know there's somebody who's gone through exactly what they're going through. Here's some of the things you're going to experience along the way, and here's what's going to happen at the end.
Yeah.
And I'd like to soften that sometimes too with, you know, here are the extremes, right? Like, here's where you could go, and here's where you should be prepared to go, because the best houses that are priced right sell first. And the other end of the spectrum is if we happen upon an off-market property, a property that doesn't have multiple offers, or an overpriced property, I can still get you a killer deal. So this is property specific, not like blanket market knowledge.
Yeah.
Totally.
So
Yeah, and I think
Linda,
it's really it's knowing your buyer and what they are willing to do. So like I'm finding we help a lot of out of state people, and you're seeing people from Seattle, San Francisco, New York, like they're like due diligence deadline is still a thing. And so I think it's really, you have the ability to push boundaries. And Lee Stern, I mean, it was my first big deal. She said, this client, if you don't get them the home, no matter the price, will probably fire you. And like in hindsight, it was probably a little harsh, but like if your buyer, if it's a higher price buyer and they don't necessarily care about the investment portion as much, like they're not selling it in 3 years, have the conversation with them. Hey, we might have to overpay, but do you really want this house? You might not find this one for another 6 months. And then it's a whole nother risk level compared to, like, I'm never going to tell someone who's selling in 3 years, hey, let's push your boundaries, let's overpay. But you really do have to assess where they're willing to go.
Real quick, what's your guys' take on hard earnest money? Because I've been doing it the past couple, and I've been winning with it. And it's not, I mean, I feel like if you walk the property and know that it's in good shape and everything, from obviously experience that you guys have, for the most part, you should be pretty good with putting it hard, as long as their financials are good. What are your guys' takes on it? I just threw a question there, sorry.
Yeah,
That's
perfect
all right.
segue. That was our next question.
Oh, check me out.
Yeah, nice work, Mace. I personally like to use if I'm confident with my lender and my guy's approved for 600,000 and he's only spending 400,000 and he's had a secure job that's essential, and I'm confident, he's confident, and the lender's confident, I like to make that earnest money go hard after due diligence. But I still think that my buyer should have the right to go in there and inspect that property. And typically that's their shared opinion. I've never actually written it to where the earnest money goes hard right up front, or even a portion of it, just to win the competition. So I guess somebody else will have to speak to that, but I do like the one after due diligence quite a bit. I think that helps.
It's risk tolerance, right? Like a lot of your clients are just like, no, like not until I have an inspection. You will get some that are like, yeah, let's do it. I'm going to buy the house no matter what. It doesn't matter. For the most part, I work with a lender that writes me a guarantee letter, and it guarantees the buyer's earnest money. So after the inspection, we let their earnest money go hard every single time. It's just it's a no-brainer.
Oh.
I have gotten some lower price offers accepted with just 500 non-refundable upon acceptance. Again, it's buyers, it's not your buyer that has $0 in their bank account. But I mean, we ended up getting the seller to take an offer that was $3,000 less than their highest, because my buyer put $500 non-refundable upon acceptance. And then they did the rest of it non-refundable at due diligence. Because I think, like what Linda said, I mean, I think everybody kind of said this, most people are going to want to do an inspection before they're going to start letting money go hard. But at the same time, depending on how much money there is in their bank account and what their risk tolerance is, $1,000 may be nothing to them. So don't use your financial thermostat to determine what they're willing to do. You just ask the question and see what they are willing to risk.
Yeah, I
So
like that.
on a property that we just put under contract on, what we did is we did 10,000 earnest, 5,000 non-refundable after due diligence. They came back and countered at 515, which is 10,000 over what we had done. I knew that they had countered 2 different offers to 515. And I kind of talked to them a little bit about doing, like, if you want to come back at 510, I think that's still a strong offer. Maybe we could do $1,000 non-refundable upon acceptance, just because they are going to take probably a $5,000 hit, because the buyer on the other end had already verbally accepted that. We didn't do the $1,000 non-refundable, but my question for you is what is too high? Because I kind of talked to them about that. I'm like, yeah, you guys have $110,000 down. Like, earnest money is definitely something that we can use to our advantage. But on the seller side of things, as a seller's agent, like if they come in with $20,000, $30,000 earnest money on a $500,000 house, is that alarming for you?
I mean, I guess it depends on the seller. It depends on the price point. It depends on, I mean, that's why I asked the question to the listing agent. Like, what are you looking for in earnest money? Like in cases where it's a buy sell, it might be really important for that seller to have X amount of dollars as earnest money because it's the same amount they put up on their purchase. So
It's that what if scenario that broker Dave was talking about the other day. It's like, what if they can't sell? Because throwing a bunch of earnest money at a seller isn't always the best. Like this last weekend, I wrote an offer and I said, should we do 5,000? And he's like, that's a little bit high for this price point. So we ended up doing 3,000 and that's what ended up getting the offer accepted. So
yeah, it's all about communication. That, and if your buyer is really adamant about not letting any of the earnest money go hard after acceptance, schedule the inspection like right after the response deadline on the highest and best. Like let the agent know, hey, we've got an inspection tentatively ordered for, if they're taking highest and best on Monday, we've got an inspection scheduled for Tuesday. It does two things. It triggers the agent to think, hey, they're super serious. They have an inspection already ordered. And then it gives your clients peace of mind because they know if they get an accepted offer on Monday, they're going to know on Tuesday whether or not they're going to buy the house.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for me, and it's probably something I learned this year, it's really have the ability to ask your client the super awkward questions. So I think, like, I personally have a lot of investors, and I have one guy who just money falls on trees for the guy. So it's in his interest to write hard earnest money right off the bat and maybe get a $20,000 discount just because the offer is so aggressive. But I'm not like, the guy has millions. I'm not going to tell someone with 100,000 in their account, hey, if you lose $5,000, you lose $5,000. So it's all about weighing and like ask your clients if they're willing to tell you their financials to a degree. I think it really helps you. It also helps you know where it's going to go, and it allows you to be more aggressive if you understand their situation compared to if you think, is 20%, they can put 20% down, but is that all their money? Is that 90% of their money? Do they have way more than that? So ask those awkward questions.
Nice. Anything else on earnest money going hard?
I'm dying to know the answer to Broker Dave's question, Liz.
Wait, I had a question actually. Hold on. I forgot my question, but I had one for Linda. I'm backing up to the last question for when you go to your buyer with your consultation. Are you holding a Zoom consultation or meeting them in the office? And are you doing this before seeing any properties?
Well, you're talking to the woman that has been quarantined to her own property for going on 5 months now. So the answer is Zoom consultations, 100%. And I'm screen sharing and showing them a lot of my content. I will not meet and show a buyer homes without having done a consultation first. Number one, safety right now. I've got a couple of high-risk family members that are going through cancer treatment, and we just can't afford to have anybody get sick. And number two, if they're not going to meet with me and talk to me about what this market looks like, I am set up for a disaster for the next 3 months I'm working with them.
Yeah. Touche. All right, Broker Dave's answer on, do you think buyers' offers are confidential?
Okay, so we had perfect timing because this morning Broker Dave was on a podcast with three attorneys, three brokers. Yeah, he was on a podcast, right? 3 attorneys, 3 brokers, and the.
I know what a podcast is.
No, probably not.
I don't know what a consultation is, so I mean.
Did he bad name me?
And the heirs of the emissions, the board, like the board director of heirs and emissions. And so they were trying to get some things ready and they were kind of delayed. And he was like, well, hey, I got a question for us to discuss before we get started. They were going to go over a couple of articles of the Board of Ethics. And so he said, yeah, my agents are asking me, is your offer confidential? So the 3 attorneys kind of argued back and forth and said, there's nothing in the contract or in the rules that prevent it. However, we do have the whole, what about the rule of unfair dealing? And that's like a big ethical thing. There was one attorney that was like, I can defend that all day, that you can share other people's offers. And the other one says, I'll see you in court because I can rule, talk about unfair dealing. He's like, it was really interesting to watch these guys all go back and forth. One thing that came up as a recommendation is if you don't want your offer shared, you can always say this offer to remain confidential. However, the rebuttal to that was, well, you're not really in contract yet because nobody signed anything on the other side. So it's not like it's an enforceable part of the contract. Another thing is the listing agent's job is to get the best interest for the client, right? And so if that means sharing an offer that they just got so that they can get their seller more money, well, that seems totally within their realm of possibilities and things they can do. But again, they kept going back to the whole ethics of unfair dealing. So basically what it came down to is there is no clear-cut rule. And the other thing that they mentioned is like there's no contract between agents that they have to be fair with us. Your only contract is your duty to your fiduciary and your client. And he said it was a 30-minute argument, and what he kind of ended with, he's like, if you're that close to the line, the attorneys want to go to court to fight it. Is that even where you want to play? Yeah. So that was kind of it was kind of like, it's legal, yes, but is it ethical? Probably not.
Here's a thought, because I've done this with my sellers. So you're prepping your buyers on the competitive market side, but also prep your sellers. I have my seller clients sign a notice of multiple offer disclosure so that they know what their 3 options are right up front, so that I don't have to do it retrospectively. And then I have a conversation with them about, what does this look like? What information do you want me to disclose to potential buyers? And specifically, do you want me to tell any agent, because all agents need to be treated fairly, right? Do you want me to disclose the best offer? And I have them put it in writing for me. I want to be covered. And if I have direction from my seller, it's my fiduciary responsibility to adhere to that direction.
Love it.
Love that. On the buyer side, I feel that, like you guys said, most agents do not even call to talk about offers. So I've gotten some pushback when I just say, hey, where do we need to be type thing. I'm pretty, open-ended about it. And I get a little bit of pushback. They're like, well, that's not really fair. I'm like, well, if nobody else is calling you and nobody else is asking, is that really my fault? I don't think it is. But I also, after talking to Broker Dave, I kind of thought, you know what? I think what it is it's like you ask the question once, you can tell they're super uncomfortable, then that's where it ends. But if you think that you can get the information that you need to get your client the winning offer, that's where my fiduciary duty is. So why not ask the questions and see if I can't get the answer? And obviously, Broker Dave always goes back to, it's not all about price. And that's not always all I'm asking about either, because just like Linda, I've won multiple offer situations because of other terms in the contract, nothing to do with the price.
100%. And for those agents that are really loose-lipped and will tell me, I'll ask every single detail. I want to know what other offers are, if they're conventional financing, if they're FHA financing, how much money they're putting down, when are they closing, can we have better dates, like all of it. I want them to spill their guts to me.
The talk show comes out when that happens.
Well, now I was just in this situation. We almost went to court with the seller. Like, we as the buying agents literally can ask whatever they want. If they tell us no, they tell us no. Cool. I mean, there's no gray line of, hey, what's the best offer? What price do we have to get to? Like, yes, I guess you might be playing the court game on the seller side if you disclose a few things more than you should have. But I think, it's how we won an offer. I was nosy. The guy told me I was nosy. And then he finally just was like, this is what you got to get to. Do it or no. And I'm like, all right, thanks, brother. So.
That's a thank you. I'll have that over to you in a minute.
Yeah, right.
Can't wait to do business with you.
Cheers.
Yeah, and I always use the line, like when they're like, oh, I have 12 offers, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I'm not going to give you, I don't need practice writing offers, number one.
Yep.
I'll
give you a 13.
I want to give you more work and give you another offer to present that's not even going to end up at the top of the list. So why don't you just make it easier for both of us? It's 8 o'clock on a Friday night. I want to go do my thing. I'm sure you want to go do yours. Just tell me what I need to do.
Yeah, and one quick thing here for newer agent, because I was on the raw side of this. So I think look up every agent you're doing a deal with. So if an agent is saying, oh, it's going to take hard earnest money, if Lee Stern is telling me it's going to take hard earnest money, it's probably going to take hard earnest money. If someone who's done 2 deals is saying it's going to take hard earnest money, I'm probably calling bluff on them, and I'll tell my client, hey, this is what they're saying. Make the judgment call. I'm on the side of I don't believe it, but really judge their patterns. If they're going this way, then that way. Really, really pay attention to all that.
Agreed.
Yeah, remember that people will often show you who they are. And
Yep.
what I mean by that is if somebody seems difficult or unwilling to disclose information, that's probably how they're going to be the entire transaction. And really, to speak to what Liz said, like, research these agents. You guys, there's a ton of new agents that are really, really talented and really smart in this industry. And there are a ton of agents that are like dinosaurs and still don't know how to do their job. So numbers don't always say anything about a person, but like the combination of numbers and the conversation that you're having with them is going to give you a really good insight into what you have in store for you during the transaction.
Totally.
Well, that's interesting because I thought it was fiduciary duty, but thanks for pointing that out, Linda, because that's just to my own selling client, my listings. And so if it's helpful for them, I could disclose some of the, hey, you know, we've got this on the table, depending on the situation. What can you do?
Just get it in writing. CYA.
Yeah, smart. All right, do we have any
And
other
also
questions?
one last thing, because I just had this happen. Also be straight up with your clients from be a good person. I had a seller who was about to rescind a counter over $500 and they were obsessed with it. They were at work 9 to 5. They just couldn't get away. So like, be the good person. And also, cause like, I'm a believer if we jack the $500 counter, like they're probably coming at the next party's probably coming for us way more. So I think don't necessarily be the one to always net the highest price. Just be careful and what's best for your seller buyer.
Yeah, ethics.
Yeah, because if you're good, you're going to see that agent again, and sometimes it takes
I was
to recover.
about to say, you will. I mean, not every agent does a ton of business. If you run into someone who's done a ton of deals and you do an awesome deal with them, they know a ton of people and they'll really put your name out there on the good notes. So.
Well, competitively, is there anything else we want to talk about? We talked about how to get our offer noticed, what questions to ask the seller, how to prep our buyer, earnest money going hard.
Sell your soul to the seller.
I have a quick thought that I kind of talked to Tanner about this one a little bit, and I just want to get a second opinion. My clients have a pre-approval through Better Mortgage based out of California. The loan officer has like a 949 number. And I kind of talked to them a little bit and was like, you know, I usually work with people that I know. And I was like, I'm fine to work with whatever lender it is that you want. But I kind of got the idea that maybe a pre-approval letter from some kind of random company, if you will, can be kind of alarming. Is it?
Only if the lender doesn't respond to my phone calls.
Yeah.
Only if the lender doesn't take the proactive approach to call me as the listing agent, and especially if there's no communication between you and that lender.
Oh yeah, I've never talked to them. And that's what I'm like, I know they're a 9 to 5 establishment, which I mean, I got my clients to finally go with Mandy over at Intercap, so that's good. But I was like, you know, I mean, realistically, they were giving him a 3.2 interest rate. And I was like, yeah, she's going to give you, you know, 2.7, 2.6. So I'll probably go over there. But writing the offer, I was a little bit nervous putting in a pre-approval from a company that clearly.
I think I've definitely had offers not get accepted for that exact reason, either from a big bank where the lender never called back, or, you know, like an online lender. One thing just to be really careful about is making sure that your client knows like what you advise, and also that is ultimately their decision. Just because you can get in trouble for steering them, and say you steer them to Mandy and she messes up and she screws something up and they don't get the house, or they lose earnest money or something like that. that's going to come back on you. So you just need to be really careful.
Yeah,
I think
mean, always let them know that ultimately it's their choice, but have a really good value proposition as to why you recommend the lenders that you do, and make sure that the people that you're working with are honestly people you would trust with your own transactions. Like, these are people that need to understand how you do business. They need to understand that they need to be proactively calling the agents on the other side. I'll tell you what, lenders that call me as the listing agent 100% of the time have a way better shot at getting the house than any other offers. Because if I can't speak to your lender and I don't know that your buyer has already had their financials reviewed and their credit pulled, your offer means nothing.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, and if the buyer's still set on using their own lender, that's the next thing you do, or the first thing you do, is pick up the phone and call that lender and just start interviewing them. How are we going to do business together? Are you going to call the listing agent when I submit this offer, or every offer? I need to know that you're on our side and it's a team effort, and you can kind of judge that character of business and then go back to your client and say, hey, I talked to your lender and he's got nothing on my guy, and I can give you 2 or 3 guys I would use over this guy, and I'll let you interview all of them, but I'm definitely going to recommend one of them, and this is why.
Yeah, and I think going to that point, partnerships are, that's probably an illegal word, not partnerships, but picking the best people in the state is huge. So like something that we preach to our team, like we try and send people to Matt because we know, like, simply, like, I truly think he is the best in the state. He will close a loan in 10 days. We will be able to compete with cash. So I think it's, the other side has probably either heard of us or Matt Barrett at Intercap Lending. Like, it's every little thing you have that can work in your favor, absolutely use. And I think it's, I mean, if I have someone who can close in 10 days, we'll call someone at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night to get the offer accepted. I'll go with them all day.
Well,
All right,
thanks
I got
for
a question.
having me, guys. I actually have to run. I have an appointment in 1 minute online. I'm not running anywhere, but it was good to see all of your faces.
I
And,
love you.
I love you. And if anybody needs anything, feel free to reach out. You
Thanks,
probably
girl.
won't see me anytime soon.
Thank
but-
you, Linda.
You're the best.
You're my hero. Love you.
Hey, before we end, I've got a marketing question for you guys.
Yes.
Well, typically and cyclically, usually August kind of means a little bit of a slowdown. People are going back to school. I'm just kind of curious what you guys have been seeing as far as your buyers and how many offers you're up against. Are you guys seeing any kind of slowdown, or is it still full speed ahead?
I wish it would slow down.
I know.
Yeah.
I wish it would too. I think it's just because rates are so good, man. And
Yeah,
people
I
can
think
really
it's just gonna keep going.
actually make that move up that they haven't been able to make for years because rates are so good that I don't think it's going to slow down.
Well, and it's a
And they don't know if they're going back to school or not. They may not be
Yeah.
going back to school.
Yeah, some of them
Utah's
are.
very-
I understand.
Utah's very desirable. I mean, we're not just we're very diverse. So even if economic downfall comes our way, we hold up a lot better than some place like Michigan or Wyoming or places that only have their toes in one thing, like oil and gas or agriculture or whatever.
Las
So I think-
Vegas.
yeah, Vegas. Yeah, we love Vegas, but Vegas, yeah. But no, that's kind of where it's at. I mean, we have so much growth over here and so many people, so much demand, but not enough supply still. That interest rates paired with that, it's like.
Did I hear of a second government check going around? I don't know if that.
Yeah.
Is that starting to hit the market yet?
I think so. I better get that.
Yeah. Where is that?
But yeah, I think it'll keep going. So.
But yeah, if these buyers are having lower interest rates and more free money on their hands, all of a sudden they can purchase a higher price point.
Yep.
And they, now, and that explains I don't know if you guys are landlords or not, but I've noticed an actual decline and competitive in my rental rates. I've been trying to rent properties. And so I think these renters are all of a sudden becoming buyers. And so our rental pool has lessened.
Mm-hmm.
When I really think the fear of missing out is starting to happen. So I think like
Well,
2
FOMO.
years ago, no, literally, like I think 3 years ago, Mason and I would talk, hey, like, is something going to happen to the market? Now I think it's like, hey, we're the next Portland, we're the next Denver, we're the next big city. And I think it's really important looking at the economic plans of the city, seeing where it's going. Like Salt Lake's on the map. And so that's why I think the people who have said it's crashing since 2014 are starting
I
to
said
buy.
they didn't get in. Yeah. I mean, I literally had people back in March say, oh my God, the home prices have gone up this much since March, because they wanted to hold out after COVID, and obviously for good reason, but people who are jumping in no matter what are happy so far. So obviously I don't have a crystal ball, or I would be vacationing on my own island somewhere, but it is what it is.
I think for us young ones that haven't actually been through a recession, we do have to remember that we haven't been through a housing crash, I should say, because we are in a recession, but we just have to remember to kind of check yourself and just remember that it can change overnight, just like it did back in 2008. And so, just make sure you're asking those buyers, like Michael was saying earlier, if they're not going to be in the house for at least, if they're only planning on a 2 or 3 year plan, it may really not be the best time for them, unless they have good risk tolerance, right? If they're like, if I break even or something, it's fine. But if they're planning on doing what a lot of our clients have done, in the past few years and moving in 2 or 3 years after, getting $50,000 to $70,000 in equity, just have to, caution them that it could take longer than that, and maybe it won't, but you just have to remember that it's not stay good forever.
And preface it as, 3 of the last 5 recessions, real estate hasn't dropped. It's stayed stable or gone up. So I would I don't think any housing crash. It might, who knows? But I think people are so confident in the Utah market. Maybe not in the New York market or the Michigan market, but in the Utah market, people are very confident in, and it really does change state to state. So I think we'll keep seeing some fun times, keep seeing record-breaking numbers.
And don't you think that there's going to be a lot of people who are unemployed for a really long time, because they're saying how many restaurants are going to go out of business? And so next year, don't you think we're going to see like the short sale, the foreclosure stuff because of the?
No, there's way too much equity, I think, to see short
That's
sales.
what I think. Yeah.
But I do think
that is crazy.
I do think there could be an opportunity, like for instance, like in those lower price points, I think there could end up being some opportunities next year, because if renters have to go find different places to live, and some of these investors that only have onesie twosies that can't pay for, a mortgage, I think there could potentially be some opening up. But I think there's so much equity out there right now that people aren't going to be short selling, foreclosing and stuff like that. They're going to go, oh, I've got 70 grand in equity, I'll hurry up and sell it. So hopefully we just get into a more stabilized market. But
right.
That's what I'm hoping. Kind of like California. California, you see a little plateau happening, which is good. So hopefully we see something of that sort.
I think right now, like, there's not a lot of upper management or higher salary jobs being laid off currently. I know that there's starting to be more, but right now, the demographic of people that are unemployed are the servers, people from kind of more of a service industry. And when you look at the demographic of it, a lot of times they're the renters, which is why I think where Liz is saying, like, you're going to see renter or landlords getting rid of their properties. I think that's more of a likelihood than a bunch of short sales and foreclosures, personally.
Totally.
Well, I think be really careful. Yeah, and be really careful on advising clients, like from the, hey, market is going to crash or explode. But like, I do think you have to keep in mind, like, for these major companies, these tech companies, these people who are buying land in Lehigh and having 200, 500 employees, like, those companies aren't going to California anymore. They're flooding to Utah. So I have a hard time believing with all these, they're high priced jobs for the Utah market historically. So I have a hard time thinking, oh, we're in for a recession. Even if something does happen.
Yeah. Keep in mind, you're not a financial advisor, so don't give crazy financial advice unless just preface it. Hey, I'm no financial advisor. You're no lender. So don't get don't get a ton of mortgage advice. Just keep it as, hey, you're a real estate agent. You know the housing side of things. So just so you save your ass in any.
Here's a couple graphs for you to look at and draw your own conclusions.
Exactly.
Right now,
plug for recruiting is go find your favorite server that's out of work and get them into real estate.
Hey,
I
check
have
you out.
three different people getting into real estate right now, all of which I think are going to come to KW. So
Yay.
out of that.
That's awesome.
Joining the crew.
Yeah.
All
If
right.
they want to
well,
join a team.
I think Desiree had a question. Desiree, did you ask yours?
Who? Me?
Desiree.
I did, but I don't know if we've moved too far past it. Really,
No.
oh, what's up?
I'm not asking my lenders enough qualifying questions, obviously, based on, can they compete with cash? How fast can they close? And I was wondering if there was a good resource of qualifying questions that was available, or if I could just pick your brains for a few other gems.
Michael.
Yeah, so that's where like the legal gray line hits. So like the way we compete with cash and all that is because our lender can close in 10 days. So the person, if I have a guy who's loaded, he's on time, money falls from trees, he has a billion co-signers, and he chooses the wrong lender, we can't compete with cash. So I think it's really more of, hey, get you qualified, and then you ask the lender they're working with, hey, can we close in 10 to 15 days? And that's how you compete with cash.
Okay.
And then when you get into the client part with all the earnest money, are you willing to lose here? Are you willing to give up repairs? That kind of thing. That's the more personal questions you have with your client. But don't ever ask the lender, hey, does this person have enough cash to perform? That's where it gets tricky.
Got it.
Lee Stern has a way that she does it where she basically has the buyer give the lender permission to answer all of her questions. And she asks specifically like credit scores and length of time at the job and stuff like that. And I mean, it's Lee, she's a little bossier than probably the rest of us. But I'm sure they have that written down somewhere, how they do that.
Okay. I've been asking some of these questions at my buy when I'm getting my buyer signed, like, credit scores and the job history. That's fine, isn't it?
Yeah, I ask those questions anyway, because if people are like, I have no idea if I can buy a house, I might ask simple things like, what's your credit score range? What's your income range? In my mind, I'm not going to tell them, oh, you could probably buy a $350,000 house, but I will let them know, okay, great, let me have you talk to my lender. They'll give you a figure, but then I kind of know going into it what my lender is going to be working with.
I've been collecting some of the basics, credit score, job history, if they have any money saved to down. People will usually tell me that up front, and I'm passing that information on to the lender so that they're set up with some of that from the get-go. So,
Yeah, that's smart. And then the lender is going to ask the client the same questions and start obtaining that information from them. So yeah, it's a pretty basic, a few just leading questions. What you've been asking is all you need. That's enough to say you're going to need some stuff like this, and I'm going to put you in touch with my lender. And then once we know how much you can spend, we can go shopping, or we can meet again and discuss the market, or you can have that meeting up front. Sounds like Linda might actually have that meeting before sending them to a lender. I think I personally like to send them to the lender right away, because if they're not approved to finance, they're an incubation buyer versus a right now buyer.
I like the way you said that. Now we're ready to go shopping. That seems really people can relate to. Okay.
Yeah, it's fun. It's like that's what they want to do from the start. You're like, hit the brakes. I would love to take you shopping, but first we're going to need to know how much money you can spend.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
All right, I need to scram till 1 p.m., but I love everyone, and if you have questions, you feel free to reach out.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Liz.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.